My daughter Hazel stood at her 5th birthday party, tapping her plastic princess fork against her juice cup. The metallic clicking sound cut through the afternoon chatter like a tiny bell demanding attention. 20 faces turned toward her as she pushed back her chair and climbed onto it, her purple tulle dress spreading around her small frame like flower petals. "I want to tell everyone something special," she announced, her voice carrying across the backyard with surprising clarity. My sister Roxanne laughed from across the picnic table, her wine glass catching the sunlight. She exchanged amused glances with our mother Dorothy before turning back to Hazel with that condescending smile I knew too well. "This should be good. Remember when her first word was mama at 18 months? We all thought she'd be slow like her mother never could keep up in school either." The casual cruelty of her words made my stomach tighten, but before I could intervene, Hazel straightened her shoulders and looked directly at her aunt. Her green eyes held a focus that seemed impossible for a 5-year-old. "Aunt Roxanne, I know what you did with Mr. Brennan from next door." The entire backyard seemed to freeze. Someone's fork clattered onto a paper plate. My brother-in-law, Victor, who'd been laughing at something my father, Gerald, had said, turned slowly toward his wife. Hazel continued, her small voice now the only sound in the yard. "I heard you on the phone when you thought I was napping. You told him you love him. You said Uncle Victor bores you. You said you only stay for the money and the house." Roxanne's face transformed from smug amusement to pure horror in the span of 3 seconds. Her perfectly manicured hand trembled as she set down her wine glass, missing the table edge. The glass shattered on the concrete patio, red wine spreading like blood. "That's ridiculous!" Roxanne's voice came out as a shriek. "She's making things up. Children have wild imaginations. Victor, you can't possibly believe a 5-year-old who barely even talks most of the time." But Hazel wasn't finished. She stood steadier on her chair, like a tiny prosecutor delivering closing arguments. "Last Tuesday, you told Mr. Brennan you wished Uncle Victor would just disappear. You were crying in his blue truck behind the grocery store. I saw you when Mommy and I went shopping. You were kissing him." The backyard erupted. My mother gasped and covered her mouth. My father stood up so fast his lawn chair tipped backward. Victor's face had gone from confusion to a dangerous shade of red. Roxanne knocked over the entire punch bowl in her desperation to stand, pink liquid cascading across the white tablecloth and onto the grass. "Victor, please let me explain." She reached for her husband, but he stepped back like her touch might burn him. "Explain what? That my 5-year-old niece knows more about my marriage than I do?" His voice was deadly quiet, worse than if he'd screamed. Roxanne's perfectly composed face crumbled. Mascara streaked down her cheeks as she stumbled toward the house, her high heels catching in the grass. "This isn't happening! This cannot be happening!" She crashed through the back door, her sobs echoing through the screen. The door slammed so hard the frame shook. Through the kitchen window, we could see her collapse against the counter, her shoulders heaving. Hazel climbed down from her chair with careful precision and walked over to me. She slipped her small hand into mine and looked up with those penetrating green eyes that had fooled everyone into thinking she was slow. "I'm not slow, Mommy," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I just knew that listening teaches you more than talking, but sometimes you have to tell the truth, even when it hurts. You taught me that lying breaks families apart. Aunt Roxanne was breaking ours." The remaining guests stood frozen in a tableau of shock and disbelief. My nephew Colton had started crying, not understanding why his mother had run away. Birthday cake sat untouched, candles still unlit. Pink streamers fluttered in the breeze, a mockery of celebration against the devastation that had just unfolded. Victor finally moved, walking toward the house with the measured steps of a man approaching his execution. Before he reached the door, he turned back to look at Hazel. "Thank you," he said simply, then disappeared inside. My mother sank into her chair, aging 10 years in 10 seconds. Dear God, what just happened? My father put his hand on her shoulder, but his eyes were on me and Hazel. For the first time in 5 years since Hazel had been born and he'd questioned whether I could raise her alone, I saw respect in his gaze. "The truth happened," Hazel said, squeezing my hand tighter, "and now everyone knows I was never slow. I was just waiting for the right moment to speak up." The party was over. The secret was out. and my 5-year-old daughter had just detonated a bomb that would reshape our entire family's future with nothing more than a few carefully chosen sentences and the courage to speak them aloud. 5 years ago, I became a single mother when Hazel's father, Brandon, abandoned us 3 weeks after her birth. He stood in the doorway of our cramped apartment, his duffel bag already packed, and announced he'd taken a job on an Alaskan fishing vessel. "I can't do this, Melinda. I thought I could, but I can't. I'm suffocating here." He left behind a colicky newborn, a devastated 27-year-old mother, and 6 months of unpaid rent. I never heard from him again, not even a birthday card for Hazel or a single child support payment. My parents, Dorothy and Gerald, welcomed us into their spacious 2-story colonial in Westbrook, the same house where I'd grown up alongside my older sister Roxanne. The pale yellow walls still displayed our childhood photos in chronological order, from gap-toothed school pictures to Roxanne's elaborate wedding portrait. My father converted his home office back into my childhood bedroom, adding a crib where my desk once stood. "Family takes care of family," my mother declared, though her tone suggested I should be grateful for their charity rather than secure in their love. Those early months tested every ounce of strength I possessed. I'd enrolled in nursing school just before Brandon left, determined to build a stable future for my daughter. My days consisted of classes and clinical rotations, while my nights belonged to Hazel and her unpredictable sleep schedule. I'd rock her in the old wooden chair my grandmother had passed down, studying anatomy flashcards by nightlight, while she fussed against my shoulder. My mother would often appear in the doorway at 2 in the morning, her silk robe perfectly tied, suggesting that maybe formula would help Hazel sleep better, that maybe I was doing something wrong. Working nights as a pediatric nurse at Westbrook General became my reality once I graduated. The schedule allowed me to be home during Hazel's waking hours, though it meant surviving on 3 or 4 hours of broken sleep. I'd arrive home at 7:30 in the morning, just as my parents were having breakfast, and take over Hazel's care, so my mother could attend her book club or grocery shop without the burden of babysitting. The arrangement worked, but it came with a price: constant commentary on my parenting choices. My sister Roxanne would visit every Sunday without fail, arriving in her spotless white Mercedes with her husband Victor and their son Colton in tow. Victor owned Greenscape Landscaping, the largest landscaping company in the county, and Roxanne had built a successful career as a real estate agent, specializing in high-end properties. They lived in a 5-bedroom house in the new development across town, complete with a pool and a 3-car garage. Sunday dinners became performances where Roxanne showcased her perfect life while subtly highlighting everything wrong with mine. "You really should try harder to find a father figure for Hazel," Roxanne would say while arranging her homemade quinoa salad on the table, a dish she knew I didn't have time to make. "Children need structure and male influence. Look at Colton. He's already reading at a 2nd-grade level, and his teachers say he's gifted. Having both parents makes such a difference." The comparison started before Hazel could even walk. When she didn't take her first steps until 14 months, Roxanne made sure everyone remembered that Colton had walked at 10 months. "Every child develops at their own pace," she'd say with false sympathy while exchanging worried glances with our mother. When Hazel's first word came at 18 months, a soft "mama" whispered during bath time, the whispers began in earnest. I overheard them in the kitchen one evening while I was putting Hazel down for her nap. Roxanne's voice carried through the thin walls as she helped our mother wash dishes. "Maybe Hazel's just slow, Mom. I mean, let's be honest, Melinda barely graduated high school. She only got into that nursing program because they needed to fill spots. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." "Don't be cruel, Roxanne," my mother had replied, though her protest lacked conviction. "Some children just develop differently. We have to be patient." Patient or realistic? That child barely makes eye contact. She just sits there during meals playing with her food. When Colton was that age, he was asking constant questions, engaging with everyone. Hazel acts like she's not even present. But I knew my daughter better than they did. Behind those watchful green eyes was a mind that absorbed everything like a sponge. She'd sit quietly during family dinners, carefully cutting her food into tiny pieces while the adults talked over her head, assuming she understood nothing. They discussed everything in front of her, Roxanne's real estate deals, my father's opinions about the neighbors, my mother's criticism of my parenting, and their theories about why Brandon really left. They spoke as if Hazel was furniture, present but not conscious, slow but not suffering. They were catastrophically wrong about my daughter. Hazel understood everything, remembered everything, and was waiting for exactly the right moment to prove it. The real trouble started 3 months before Hazel's 5th birthday, when Roxanne's behavior shifted in ways that made everyone uncomfortable. She began arriving late to our Sunday dinners, breezing through the door 30 minutes after the agreed time with elaborate excuses about showing houses to difficult clients. Her phone, which used to sit ignored in her purse during family meals, now lived next to her plate, lighting up with constant messages that made her smile in a way Victor hadn't inspired in years. "Everything all right with that client?" I asked one evening as she hastily typed another response, her manicured nails clicking against the screen. "Mind your own business, Melinda. Not everyone's life revolves around being a single mother stuck in their parents' house." The venom in her voice shocked everyone at the table. She immediately softened, touching my hand with fake concern. "I'm sorry. That was uncalled for. The real estate market is just crazy right now. There's this new client who's incredibly demanding, wants to see houses at all hours." Victor seemed oblivious to the changes, or perhaps he'd simply grown used to being ignored. He spent his weekends managing emergency landscaping projects or watching football with my father in the den, their relationship built on comfortable silence and shared beers. But our mother noticed everything with the sharp eyes of someone who'd spent 40 years monitoring her daughter's every move. "Roxanne seems distracted lately," she mentioned while helping me frost Hazel's birthday cake 3 weeks before the party. We stood side by side in her kitchen, me piping pink roses while she smoothed vanilla frosting with practiced strokes. "She's lost weight, bought an entirely new wardrobe, and did you see those diamond earrings last week? Victor's business is doing well, but not that well." "Maybe you should talk to her," I suggested, adding another sugar rose to the practice cake. I tried. She accused me of being jealous of her success. My mother's voice carried hurt beneath the indignation. "Said I always favored you because you needed more help, and now I'm trying to find problems where there aren't any." Meanwhile, Hazel had become increasingly clingy around me and noticeably withdrawn whenever Roxanne visited. She'd previously tolerated her aunt's condescending baby talk and head pats, but now she actively avoided being alone with her. During bath time one evening, as I helped her wash her hair, she asked me a question that made my blood run cold. "Mommy, why does Aunt Roxanne tell lies?" I kept my voice steady while rinsing shampoo from her dark hair. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "She tells Uncle Victor she's at house showings, but she's not." Hazel splashed her rubber duck with unusual focus. "She meets the man with the blue truck, Mr. Brennan, who lives next door to Grandma. They sit in his truck behind the food mart and kiss." My hands stilled in the warm water. Arthur Brennan was our parents' divorced neighbor, a 40-something insurance adjuster who'd moved in 6 months ago after his own messy divorce. Roxanne had helped him find the house, a professional favor she'd mentioned only once. He was handsome in that obvious way, with silver touches at his temples and a smile that probably worked well in sales. I'd thought nothing of their connection at the time. "Hazel, you shouldn't say things like that unless you're absolutely sure. Making up stories about people is wrong." She turned to face me, her green eyes serious beyond her years. "But I am sure, Mommy. I saw them when we went grocery shopping last Tuesday, and Thursday, and the Tuesday before that." She parks her white car behind the store where she thinks nobody can see, then gets in his truck. "How long has this been happening?" I tried to keep the alarm out of my voice. "Since after Christmas. Remember when Aunt Roxanne got that new perfume that made Grandma sneeze? Mr. Brennan bought it for her. I heard her on the phone in the bathroom when everyone thought I was napping. She said she loves him and wants to leave Uncle Victor but can't because of money and Colton." I lifted Hazel out of the tub and wrapped her in a towel, my mind racing. "Have you told anyone else about this?" "No, Mommy. You taught me that family secrets stay in the family, but also that lying is wrong. Which rule is more important?" That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wrestling with an impossible decision. Confronting Roxanne could destroy her marriage and tear our family apart. Her affair would devastate Victor, who, despite his oblivious nature, genuinely loved his wife. Colton would lose his stable home. My parents would be caught in the middle, forced to choose sides in a battle that would leave everyone wounded. But staying silent made me complicit in her deception. Every Sunday dinner would become a performance, where I pretended not to know my sister was betraying her husband under everyone's nose. And what lesson would that teach Hazel about truth and consequences? I decided to wait until after Hazel's birthday party to confront Roxanne privately. Just 2 more weeks of carrying this secret, then I could find the right words to make her understand what she was risking. I never imagined my 5-year-old daughter would make that decision for me. I spent 2 weeks agonizing over what to do with Hazel's revelation, losing sleep and appetite as the weight of my sister's secret pressed down on me. Each night after my hospital shift, I'd stand in Hazel's doorway watching her sleep, wondering how a 5-year-old had become the keeper of such adult destruction. The Thursday before her birthday party, I finally made my decision. I would pull Roxanne aside after the celebration and give her an ultimatum to either end the affair or tell Victor herself. The morning of Hazel's 5th birthday arrived with perfect June weather, sunny but not too hot, with a light breeze that would keep the backyard comfortable. I woke at dawn despite having worked until 3 in the morning, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. The party was scheduled for 2 o'clock, giving me just enough time to transform my parents' backyard into the unicorn wonderland Hazel had requested. My father helped me string pink and purple streamers between the oak trees, while my mother arranged tablecloths on the rental tables. 20 guests seems excessive for a 5-year-old, she commented, smoothing invisible wrinkles from the white fabric. When Roxanne turned 5, we had immediate family only, much more appropriate. Half of them are Hazel's preschool friends, Mom. She deserves to celebrate with the people she cares about. I adjusted a bunch of silver balloons, biting back the familiar defensiveness that rose whenever my mother compared my choices to Roxanne's. Roxanne arrived at noon, supposedly to help with preparations, but immediately disappeared into the guest bathroom with her phone. I could hear her muffled voice through the door, urgent and emotional. When I knocked to check on her, she claimed she was handling a client emergency. You know how it is, Melinda. Some of us have actual careers that don't stop for birthday parties. The casual cruelty had become her default setting lately, as if hurting me might somehow ease her own guilt. She emerged 20 minutes later with red-rimmed eyes that she'd tried to cover with fresh makeup. Her hands shook as she arranged the party favors, small bags filled with candy and tiny unicorn figurines. "Where's Victor?" I asked, noticing his absence. "Running late. Some issue with the Henderson property that couldn't wait." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "He'll be here before cake." Guests began arriving at 2, transforming the quiet backyard into cheerful chaos. Hazel's preschool friends ran between the tables, their parents clustering near the drink station my father had set up. Hazel wore her favorite purple dress with layers of tulle that made her feel like a princess. She moved through her party with quiet grace, thanking each friend for coming, hugging her grandparents, tolerating Colton's boisterous energy as he demonstrated his karate moves. But I noticed her watching Roxanne with unusual intensity, those green eyes tracking her aunt's every movement. When Roxanne stepped away to answer another phone call, Hazel tugged on my hand. "Mommy, is Aunt Roxanne going to tell the truth today?" "What do you mean, baby?" I heard her crying in the bathroom. She told someone she can't do this anymore. Maybe she's going to tell Uncle Victor about Mr. Brennan. "Let's just focus on your party, sweetheart. This is your special day." Victor arrived at 2:30, apologizing profusely for his lateness. Dirt still clung to his work boots, and his greenscape landscaping polo shirt showed signs of a hard morning's work. "Sorry, Princess," he said, lifting Hazel for a hug. "Happy birthday. 5 is a big number." "Thank you, Uncle Victor," Hazel replied solemnly. "I'm glad you're here." Something in her tone made him pause, but before he could respond, my mother called everyone to gather for games. We played pin the horn on the unicorn, musical chairs, and a treasure hunt I'd organized around the yard. Through it all, the tension between Roxanne and Victor was palpable to the adults. She flinched when he tried to put his arm around her. He noticed but said nothing, just stuffed his hands in his pockets and watched their son play. When it came time for cake, everyone gathered around the picnic table. My mother couldn't resist her usual commentary as we lit the candles. Hazel's so quiet compared to the other children. Colton, why don't you tell everyone about winning the spelling bee last week? Such an accomplishment for a 7-year-old. Colton launched into his story with practiced enthusiasm, clearly used to being the family's star performer. I watched Hazel's face as her cousin dominated her birthday moment. Saw something shift in her expression, a decision being made behind those watchful eyes. That's when Roxanne, wineglass in hand, decided to add her own contribution. Remember when Hazel finally said her first word at 18 months? We were all so worried she might be slow. Some children just take longer to develop, and that's okay. The condescension dripped from every word. Several party guests shifted uncomfortably. One mother from Hazel's preschool raised her eyebrows at the cruel comparison. My father cleared his throat in warning, but Roxanne was already 2 glasses of wine past caring. Hazel carefully set down her fork and stood up on her chair. The scraping sound drew everyone's attention. She smoothed her purple dress and looked directly at her aunt with a composure that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her 5 years. "I wasn't slow," she said clearly. "I was listening." Everyone turned to stare at my daughter, 20 pairs of eyes fixed on the small figure standing on her chair like a miniature judge about to deliver a verdict. The afternoon sun caught the glitter in her purple dress, making her sparkle as she raised her plastic princess fork and tapped it against her juice cup 3 times, each tap ringing across the silent backyard. "I want to tell everyone something special," Hazel announced, her voice carrying with remarkable clarity for a child who rarely spoke above a whisper. Roxanne forced out a laugh that sounded more like breaking glass. She set down her wine and clapped slowly, mockingly. "This should be good, everyone. Our little Hazel has something special to share. Remember when her first word was mama at 18 months? We all thought she'd be slow like her mother. Melinda never could keep up in school either, so we shouldn't expect much from poor Hazel." The cruelty was so casual, so practiced, that several guests gasped. One mother pulled her child closer, as if Roxanne's words might be contagious. My mother reached for Roxanne's arm, whispering, "That's enough." But my sister shook her off. Hazel didn't flinch. She stood straighter, her small hands steady at her sides. "Like my mother. You mean the woman who graduated nursing school while raising me alone? The one who works 12-hour shifts saving sick children and still makes time to read me 3 stories every night? That mother?" The backyard fell completely silent. Even the children stopped fidgeting, sensing the electricity in the air. "Aunt Roxanne, I know what you did with Mr. Brennan from next door." The words landed like a bomb. Roxanne's face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. Victor, who'd been leaning against the deck railing, straightened slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to dread. "What are you talking about, sweetie?" Roxanne's voice pitched high and desperate. "Mr. Brennan is just our neighbor. I helped him find his house, that's all." Hazel shook her head, her dark hair swaying. "I heard you on the phone when you thought I was napping last week. You told him you love him. You said Uncle Victor bores you and you only stay for the money in the house. You said you wish Uncle Victor would just disappear so you could be with Mr. Brennan forever." "That's ridiculous," Roxanne shrieked, standing so abruptly her chair tipped backward. "She's making things up. Children have wild imaginations. Victor, you can't possibly believe a 5-year-old who barely even talks most of the time." But Hazel wasn't finished. She turned to face Victor directly, her green eyes full of sympathy that no 5-year-old should have to feel. "Last Tuesday, Aunt Roxanne told Mr. Brennan she wished you would disappear. She was crying in his blue truck behind the food mart. I saw them when Mommy and I went shopping. They were kissing. She had her hand on his face like how people do in movies when they're in love." Victor's face had gone from red to white to an alarming shade of gray. "Tuesday? You said you were showing the Harrison property until 8. "She was at Mr. Brennan's house," Hazel continued, her voice gentle but relentless. "They meet every Tuesday and Thursday, sometimes Saturday mornings when she says she's at yoga. She parks her white car behind the grocery store first, then gets in his truck. Last month she gave him a key. I saw it when they were in Grandma's driveway. It had a pink ribbon on it." My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "A key? To our house?" "To her house," Hazel clarified. I heard her say the code for the alarm too, 4567. She said Uncle Victor was too predictable, that he'd never think to check their credit card statements for the hotel charges. That detail broke something in Victor. He turned to Roxanne with eyes I'd never seen before, empty and devastated. Hotel charges? Our credit cards? Roxanne was sobbing now, mascara streaming down her face in black rivers. Victor, please let me explain. It's not what she's making it sound like. Then what is it? His voice was deadly quiet. What possible explanation could you have for why my 5-year-old niece knows about hotel charges on our credit cards? She's lying. She has to be lying. Roxanne spun toward me, her eyes wild. You put her up to this. You've always been jealous of me, of my success, my marriage, everything. You coached her to say these things. Hazel climbed down from her chair with careful dignity and walked over to me. She took my hand and faced the crowd of stunned guests. My mommy didn't know anything. I never told her because I was trying to figure out the right thing to do. But then Aunt Roxanne kept saying mean things about both of us, calling us slow and stupid. She thinks children don't understand anything. She thinks being quiet means being empty. She looked up at me with those wise green eyes. I'm not slow, Mommy. I just knew that listening teaches you more than talking. But sometimes the truth needs to be said, even when it hurts. You taught me that lies break families apart. Aunt Roxanne was breaking ours with her lies. Roxanne knocked over the punch bowl in her desperate attempt to flee, pink liquid cascading across the white tablecloth and spattering the shocked guests. She stumbled toward the house in her high heels, wailing incoherently. The back door slammed so hard behind her that the frame cracked. The party ended within minutes of Roxanne's dramatic exit. Parents quietly gathered their children, murmuring polite excuses about needing to get home. Some squeezed my shoulder in silent support as they left, while others couldn't meet my eyes, uncomfortable witnesses to our family's public destruction. The preschool mothers exchanged meaningful looks that told me this would be the talk of every playdate for months to come. Victor stood frozen in the backyard for several long minutes before finally walking toward the house with measured steps. He paused at the door and turned back to Hazel, who still held my hand tightly. "Thank you for telling me the truth," he said simply. "You're braver than any adult I know." Then he disappeared inside where we could hear Roxanne's hysterical sobbing and his calm, broken voice asking her to stop lying, to just stop lying for once. My father began mechanically cleaning up the overturned punch bowl while my mother sat at the ruined table, staring at the birthday cake with its unlit candles. "I should have seen it," she kept repeating. "A mother should know when her daughter is destroying her life." The divorce papers were filed within 2 weeks. Victor had hired a forensic accountant who discovered that Roxanne had opened 3 credit cards without his knowledge, charging thousands in hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and gifts. The pink-ribboned key Hazel had mentioned led to the discovery that Roxanne had been planning to empty their joint savings account and disappear with Arthur Brennan to Arizona, where he'd already secured a job transfer. Arthur Brennan himself vanished the night of the party, loading his blue truck and leaving without notice. His house stood empty for 3 months before selling to a young family who knew nothing about the scandal he'd left behind. Roxanne moved into a cramped apartment downtown, her real estate career crumbling when word spread about her affair. High-end clients didn't trust agents who lied to their own families. The custody battle was swift and decisive. Victor got primary custody of Colton, who struggled to understand why his mother now lived in a different house and cried every time he left her apartment. Roxanne was granted weekends, but even those visits grew sporadic as she spiraled into depression and wine bottles. But the most profound change happened within our immediate family. 3 weeks after the party, my mother came to my room late one evening. She sat on my bed, something she hadn't done since I was a teenager, and took my hand. "I owe you an apology, Melinda. I owe you years of apologies. Mom, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I spent so long comparing you to Roxanne, always finding you lacking. Too quiet in school, too slow to achieve milestones, too foolish for getting pregnant by a man who wouldn't stay. I thought Roxanne was the success story and you were the cautionary tale. But you raised a remarkable child, Melinda. Hazel saw what none of us could see. She knew when to listen, when to wait, and when to speak the truth. That's not slow. That's wisdom most adults never achieve. Hazel started. Kindergarten that September at Westbrook Elementary. Within the first month, her teacher called me in for a conference. I arrived expecting concerns about her quietness, but instead found Mrs. Patterson practically glowing with excitement. "Your daughter is extraordinary," she said, showing me Hazel's observation journal where she documented the classroom dynamics with startling accuracy. She's identified which children need friends, who's struggling with reading, and even noticed that our janitor, Mr. Franklin, has been limping and suggested we get him a chair for when he empties trash cans. This level of emotional intelligence and observation is rare. Has she ever been tested for giftedness? People always thought she was slow because she didn't talk much as a toddler, I admitted. Mrs. Patterson shook her head firmly. The quietest children often see the most. Hazel processes everything before she speaks. That's not a deficit, it's a superpower. 6 months after the birthday party, Roxanne reached out through our mother, asking to see Hazel. We met at a park on a gray December afternoon. Roxanne looked older, thinner, her designer clothes replaced with a simple coat and jeans. She knelt in front of Hazel, tears already forming in her eyes. "I need to apologize to you," she said, her voice hoarse. "I said terrible things about you and your mother. I was cruel and wrong. You were never slow. You were the smartest person in our family, the only one brave enough to tell the truth when it mattered." Hazel studied her for a long moment, then stepped forward and hugged her aunt. "Everyone makes mistakes, Aunt Roxanne, but you have to tell the truth to fix them. Lies are like poison. They make everything sick until someone is brave enough to stop drinking them." As we drove home that day, Hazel asked me, "Mommy, why do adults think children don't understand things?" "Because sometimes adults forget that being quiet doesn't mean being empty," I told her, watching her in the rearview mirror. "You taught our whole family that listening is just as powerful as speaking, maybe even more powerful." She smiled, wise beyond her 5.5 years. I knew my first word was important, so I waited until I had something real to say. And I knew the truth at my birthday was important too. Sometimes you have to hurt people to help them stop hurting themselves and others. That night, as I tucked her into bed, I realized my daughter had given our family a gift wrapped in painful truth. She'd shown us that the ones we dismiss as slow might just be the ones watching closely enough to see what really matters. The secret she revealed didn't just end Roxanne's marriage. It ended our family's toxic cycle of judgment and pretense. It forced us all to see that intelligence isn't measured in early milestones or constant chatter, but in knowing when to speak and what truths need to be told. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. Sometimes a 5-year-old's courage to speak up can save an entire family from drowning in their own lies. And sometimes the child everyone worries about becomes the one who teaches everyone else how to truly see. My daughter's first word was "mama" at 18 months. But her first truth at 5 years old changed everything. She reminded us that families built on lies will always crumble, but those rebuilt on truth, no matter how painful, can finally heal. The birthday party that destroyed one version of our family gave birth to a better one. One where quiet wisdom is valued over loud performance, where truth matters more than appearance, and where a little girl's patient observation saved us all from continuing to live a lie. If you enjoyed this story about family secrets and the wisdom of children who see everything, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who understands that the quietest voices often have the most to say. Comment below if you've ever experienced a moment when a child's innocent observation revealed a profound truth. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about families, truth, and the unexpected moments that change everything. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the smallest voices.